Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Bret Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to bretridgway.com/freebie. Welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show with Bret Ridgway, where you'll learn the keys to building a profitable speaking business from speaking industry pros. Each week, we interview a great guest who will share his or her speaking journey, identify what their keys to success have been, and highlight some critical mistakes they've made along the way that you'll want to avoid. Be sure to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, sit back, tune in, and get ready to meet this week's guest.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. I am your host, Bret Ridgway, and I'm excited to have as my guest today, Paloma Baertschi. Paloma has been a professional animal communicator for over 20 years. She has helped thousands of people understand their animal companion better. She has spoken at different events all around the world over the last 20 years. She is also a host of the podcast Understanding Animal. Welcome, Paloma, to the Spotlight on Speaking show.
Thank you for having me.
So my first question typically, Paloma, is, now you're a speaker in a whole different realm than I've interviewed on the show previously. So I don't know where all this will go, but we'll go with the flow. So how did you get involved in your field in the first place? And when did you start speaking about it?
Well, I got involved in animal communication when actually a horse talked to me. Back then, I had no idea the horse actually talked to me. I just knew something very strange had happened. And I talked to different people back then. I was in an email group. You know, back then there wasn't any social media or anything like that. We had email groups. So it was about natural horsemanship. And I talked about what had happened with this horse. And some people said, well, the horse communicated with you. That was animal communication. And I got, really excited about it. And I had to know more about it. And I investigated. And I came across Penelope Smith and learned from her how to communicate with animals. And then, obviously, I had to go out to the world. So how best to do that than speaking? So I started to offer, speaking gigs. I contacted dog clubs and, clubs about different types of animals and told them that I speak with animals. Now, back then, over 20 years ago, it was a little bit of a strange thing to do, really. But yeah, basically that's how I got started. And to my surprise, people were very, very, very interested and very curious about learning about animal communication.
So you have a very specialized subject, Paloma. So what has been your most effective tool for getting those speaking engagements?
Just talk to people.
Are you reaching out to, you mentioned dog clubs or something, but are you reaching out to animal groups in some way? Are you doing it online, offline? What tools are working for you these days?
Well, nowadays I'm doing it online. I'm on social media, I guess, like everybody else is, or most people. But back then, I just talked to people. And it was more a mouth-to-mouth thing, Mm-hmm. Somebody said, well, I know this person who does that and that. And that's really how I built up my network.
So when you do these speaking engagements, are you going in as what we would call a keynote speaker and they're paying you a fee? Or are you just doing it out of the love of animals and wanting to share? Are you selling something from the platform? I mean, how do you classify yourself as a speaker? How are you generating revenue from your speaking engagements?
Well, usually when I speak, I offer something at the end, like either a freebie where people can sign up to, or sometimes I have also sold courses.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So when you go into a speaking engagement, do you have a typical length of speech that you deliver, or have you built it modularly so that you can add or subtract as necessary based on the time frame that you're given?
Well, usually it's around 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Usually it's about 45 minutes me speaking and then 15 minutes questions, something around that.
So how do you do things differently if it's a virtual event compared to if it's an in-person event?
Well, when it's in-person event, it's kind of easier because you actually see the people's faces. Or for me, it is easier. I see the people's faces. If it's virtual, it's just you talking to a camera, really.
Mhm.
And I do engage with my audience if it's virtual. So I ask questions. I think that is very important to keep your audience engaged. Ask engaging questions so that people can feel you better when you engage with them, and you can feel the audience better when you engage with them. If it's in person, then you look at them and they look at you, and there is this magic that happens, I call it, when you know perfectly that you have the audience. And one of my animal mentors once told me, you have to get the people laughing within the first 2 minutes.
Mhm. So how do you measure the success of a speech?
Well, when I do in-person speaking and people don't want to leave at the end, then I know it was a good speech.
How about in a virtual world then?
Well, in the virtual world, I think it's I measure it with the chat, with the reactions that I get in the chat,
Mhm.
the questions that I get the engagement, how engaged is the audience, and the comments at the end. And obviously, do the people engage with you further after the speech?
So what do you do in terms of follow-up to people that have connected with you at the event? Do you have a formal follow-up system that can help you get more speaking engagements? I mean, how do you follow up from an event?
Well, I have my newsletter that people, when they get the freebie, then they come automatically onto my newsletter and they get a newsletter every week from me, so that we keep connected. And also I talk to the person that has booked me for a speech. Maybe somebody else
Mhm.
that where I could go and speak. So yeah.
So if you were to give advice to a new speaker, given the specialized nature of your topic, what are your maybe 2 or 3 greatest tips to be more successful as a speaker for somebody just up and coming in the business?
Well, I think the most important thing is be authentic. Authenticity is so important. People notice that. People notice if you are just playing a role or if it's you. I think that's really very, very, very important. And then engage with the audience and get them to laugh within the first 2 minutes.
So how do you get them to laugh within the first 2 minutes?
Well, you can either tell a story that has happened to you that maybe was embarrassing, that people usually laugh, or you can tell sort of a joke be humorous in some kind of way. Yeah. And I can remember that was the tip that gave to me my animal mentor when I had a speech about a topic for me was very difficult back then, and it was animals in the last journey. Now get people to laugh on that subject, animals in the last journey. But I did it, and it was a really good speech.
So we all know that storytelling is critically important to, building a successful speech. How does one determine which stories they should include, and how do they measure if that story has truly been as impactful as they want it to be?
I think a story should always be emotional. It should touch you emotionally. And if it touches you emotionally, you can tell it in an emotional way. That will touch your audience emotionally as well. I think emotional stories are good, no matter what kind of emotion they trigger in you.
All right, I have a couple other questions I want to ask you, Paloma, but before we do, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Bret Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to bretridgway.com/freebie.
And we are back with the Spotlight on a Speaking Show. And my guest in this episode is Paloma Baertschi, an animal communicator, which is something that I have never had on the show before. So I'm excited to have you here. So now one of my favorite questions to ask my guest, Paloma, is, okay, bare your soul a little bit here and maybe share an embarrassing moment from your speaking career where it was embarrassing at the time, but it was a valuable lesson learned for you and something that you would highly advise an aspiring speaker not to do.
Okay, so when I do my speaking gigs, if they are in person, I always take my dogs. I mean, my dogs come with me wherever I go.
You don't haul a horse around?
Not anymore. But, so I had my dog, Tony, with me, and he started to just walk into the audience. I didn't have him on a leash. I didn't have him tied up or anything. He was just with me, sitting next to me. And all of a sudden, he got up, walked into the audience, and started to say hello to people. I lost my audience. My dog had my audience.
So how do you control that in the future?
Well, I actually tried to have my dog with me. I didn't leave him again walking around. I put him on the leash so that he was with me. He stayed with me. But yeah, I mean, that was something. Fortunately, I got my dog back and the audience.
Well, that is very important. Well, the dog is just helping build rapport, apparently. So.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Everybody was talking about the doggy going into the audience afterwards. Nobody was talking about the speech.
Somebody's got to be the star of the show.
Right.
All right, and now, Paloma, if you would like to take a couple minutes and tell people a little bit more about what it is that you do specifically and how they can get involved in your world if they so choose.
Well, as you already said, I'm an animal communicator, and I help people understand their animal companion better. So whenever somebody wants to know more about their animal, maybe why they are behaving in a way that they are behaving, or they want to understand more about things about their animal, then they can contact me. And my website is speciespace.com.
So that's SPECIESSPACE.com. And we'll make sure that appears in the show notes down below.
Great.
So I want to thank you, Paloma, so much for joining me today. As always, thank you, everybody out there, for listening in today. And if you haven't been to spotlightonspeaking.com, please do so and register with your favorite service to be notified of upcoming episodes. And as always, I wish you the greatest of success in all that you do. Take care.
This has been the Spotlight on Speaking show with Bret Ridgway. Be sure to join us every week as we interview speaking industry pros and have them share their best tips for building a profitable speaking business. Until next week, thank you for tuning in, and remember to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com so you can enjoy even more great episodes like this one. While you're here, be sure to subscribe via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight on Speaking show. Until then, our sincere best wishes to you for the greatest of success as you work to build your own profitable speaking business.